There's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiI1038.com.
We're looking now at the potential effect of the major oil company Saudi Aramco listing on the Riyadh market. Aramco now appears to favour at least a two-part local listing, 1% this year, 1% next. And we've been wondering what effect the listing of a $1.5 trillion company would have on the Tadawul market and the index. And joining us on the phone now for his interpretation is Vijay Valecha, Chief Market Analyst at Century Financial. Good morning to you, Vijay.
Hi, Malcolm. How are you?
Good, thank you. Nice to talk. Aramco's profit dwarfs the combined figures for all of the other listed Saudi companies, so it seems fairly inevitable that the IPO will have a massive impact on the market. What is your impression, first of all, of when part one of this IPO might happen?
Well, the IPO by itself, of course, is not that big. It's $12 to $14 billion, but the company, of course, is probably the biggest company in the world. It has profits twice as much as Apple does, so it really does make an impact.
So when do you think part one will happen?
So part one most likely is first quarter next year, and JP Morgan is said to be running it.
Because we've been hearing rumours that it might happen as early as November. Are you saying that is probably unlikely now?
It's unlikely.
Look, I mean, given that the Saudi hierarchy are clinging to a valuation for the company closer to the original $2 trillion mark, the industry saying sort of closer 1.3 to 1.5 trillion, what percentage probability do you see in it actually happening at all in the next 6 months?
Most likely it should happen in the next 6 months. And of course, 1.5 trillion is what the numbers are coming through. Most likely the company should be listing around 1% at $12 to $14 billion.
But I mean, the big question is what will happen to all of the other companies listed on the Tadawul market. 1% of Aramco would constitute about 5% of the market on day one. And the market's been falling since April this year as people free up money to try and invest into the Aramco equity when it becomes available. And that's wiped out most of this year's gains.
So it actually does wipe out the gain that actually has had the best in the market so far. So if you look at the Tadawul index, it's actually been the best performing index in the Middle East space. It's definitely going to eat up a lot of liquidity, but at the same time, I think it's the best way to go forward.
When you say it's been the most best performing, I mean, the fall since April has wiped out most of the gains for this year.
It's just a little less negative than the other indices.
Aramco profit in the first half of the year was more than 4 times the combined earnings of the 170 Saudi publicly traded companies that have been reporting earnings. What does it mean for foreign inflows, do you think? Estimates suggest that $1.9 billion in inflows from MSCI and FTSE investors will happen. Do you think anyone's going to look at the smaller, more illiquid local Saudi stocks?
So ideally what happens is when you have a really big company coming and really floating it, what happens is that it actually gains interest in the entire stock market. So initially, yes, there'll be a dip, but overall I think that it actually gains interest for all these small companies as well.
What do you think that means then for the banks such as Al Rajhi, who currently make up about 15% of the Tadawul index? Obviously, their impact on the market will be reduced.
So the market share, of course, will reduce, but Al Rajhi Bank is overall a very great bank. Their numbers are really good, so they shouldn't be really impacted.
Vijay, thanks very much for your time this morning. Vijay Valecha, the Chief Market Analyst at Century Financial. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiI1038.com.